Hi guys, Deb Watson here, and today I'm going to show you how to recreate this old master watercolor painting from the 1800s. This is the tracing paper I use to work out my composition, and I use this to transfer it to my watercolor paper with graphite. That helps keep my watercolor paper clean. Another tip is to do your painting the right size for a mat, so you don't end up with an odd size that's difficult to frame. With most landscapes, you start from the back and work forward. I'm starting with cobalt blue to add a little bit of color to the top of the sky. Then I add plain water and pull it down to the horizon line. Not much color, just a hint. For the distant mountains, I mix cobalt blue with burnt sienna. You can add a touch of red if you want to warm them up. I start just above the horizon line on the closest mountain. That's the one on the right. The paper is still damp, but I'm okay with fuzzy lines on objects that far away. As I work towards the top, I pick up more water so that the mountain gets lighter as I go toward the top. You can also pick up more of the sky blue. This is just the initial wash of color, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Next comes the middle ground, which can be green or brown or yellow. I'm starting with green. I add green gold to my cobalt blue for a light yellowish green. For a good wash, start on one side and work your way across without going back into the area you've already painted. Paint around the wagon and the oxen very carefully. Paint around the path also. Next, mix a darker green with more paint and make the middle ground darker around the driver in a diagonal, kind of like I see on the original painting. This is still wet, so it may all blend together. The area under the bridge is the hardest part. It goes from dark at the bottom to dark green at the top. Working on dry paper, paint the dark at the bottom, creating a grassy edge with your brush. Then soften the edge with clean water. While the dark is still damp, paint the dark green coming down from the top. Make a grassy edge on the top also. Oops, I forgot to paint the area under the wagon. Next, I'm mixing green for the trees. We'll use the hit or miss method for these trees. That's a technique where you skip areas, not painting a solid wash. It works really well for flowers and trees. For the initial wash on these trees, paint around, leaving holes in the wash. Don't worry about detail at this point, just do a flat wash with a lot of tiny missed areas. Then you can start adding shading. I shade each tree separately, the first, the second, and the third. They each get darker on the right side. The tree trunks are a dark brown. Maybe not that dark, because they are far away. And there are cast shadows on the ground that connect all three trees. My green shadows are fading out, so I use some of the tree trunk color to darken them. brown and purple are both great colors to darken your greens. There's some bushy grasses under the trees also. Next, paint the bushes along the road. I added 3 bushes on the left side and 2 on the right. Odd numbers always look better. I added a tree on the left, which should be darker than the other trees because it's closer. I'm putting brown in that green also. If you don't like painting trees, you could always use a small piece of sponge to sponge the foliage on. That technique is easy and gives you great results. For the foreground grass, use a golden brown. You can use burnt sienna mixed with yellow. Once again, this is just the initial wash of color, and be sure to go around the rocks that are at the base of the bridge. That same color goes over the wooden bridge. Eventually we'll add a lot of grasses in this foreground area, but right now it's too wet. You can darken the area under the wagon with your blue-brown mix. Finally, we're getting to the center of interest. I'm making this oxen, burnt sienna on the left, and darker brown on the right. I know that you can see 2 oxen, but there's actually 4 pulling this wagon. So there should be a good number of legs, but that's enough legs for me. The side of the wagon is thicker golden brown with a little more dark brown along the top. The inside of the wagon is a bit darker. And I want a real shadow here, so more dark. While the wagon dries, you can work on your values. Darken up the right side of the big tree and add as many grasses as you want in the green section. The distant trees could get a few darker shadows also. Adjusting your values is the key to a successful painting. The darker diagonal lines in the middle ground have faded out, so I'm redoing those, and I add some golden brown also for interest. Now it's time to give the road just a hint of color. I wipe most of the gray out of my brush and drag the side of the brush across the paper. That's called the dry brush method, and it leaves most of the paper still white. I use dark brown or black to paint the wheels and the spokes. I use a light blue-gray to give some shading to that white oxen. I shade the bottom half and leave the top half white. The driver gets dark on the right side of his body and hat, and the pole he's using to drive the oxen. I put a line on each side of the arms. The corn in the wagon is dark brown on the bottom, the rocks supporting the bridge get painted gray on the shadow side. I add the lines for the boards in the bridge, but they look a little big. It might be better done with a pen or pencil. Finally, here come the grasses in the foreground. You can use any of your colors to paint the grasses in clumps, letting some of the initial gold wash show through. Now it's time to soften edges and tweak your values. Re-wet anything that's too dark or solid and dab some of the paint back up with a paper towel. Put yellow on the corn and use a clean, damp brush to soften the edges of the shadow on the figure and the white ox. I decide I want my mountains a little darker. I re-wet them with clean water and add more paint. That feels more balanced. Last, I add a small bit of fence in the back and a short bit of fence in the front right. Here's our finished painting. Feel free to add more details or make your painting as unique as you like. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. I always appreciate your support. Thanks for watching and happy painting!